lovers, and welcome to the Liberty Mike podcast, broadcasting from an undisclosed location in the heart of Dixie. I am Michael, and I'm here with Liberty Larry.
How's it going?
Doing okay. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Tired,
good.
but good.
Yeah. We've gotten some rain.
Yeah.
That's
we
been
got
nice.
like a day's worth. That's all it did Friday.
Yeah.
Like the whole day.
Well, and yesterday was overcast all day, so it never got really hot. That was kind of nice.
Dude, I'm loving the cooler temperatures. I say cooler. It's not really cool, but it's not like dying hot outside. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
I wanted on the record that the girl I was dating split up with me the day after she met Liberty Larry. I'm gonna blame him.
Running them off.
It's got to be his fault. Everything was fine until then.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, obviously everything wasn't fine until then, but
yeah.
it's easier to blame you than me.
Hey, I like. What can I say? Like I say, I'm good at running folks off.
Yeah. I get it.
She was no good for you anyway, man.
You're right. Man. Well, so the reason that we have been delayed here is because Liberty Larry's been stuck at work.
I live at a store now.
Yeah.
I feel like I do.
Because there was an employee who was having family health issues, I guess. So thoughts to her and her family.
Oh, yeah.
Same to everybody affected by the hurricane. I got a friend in Charlotte who I contacted to make sure that he was all right.
Yeah.
And he said he's fine. They weren't really affected, but he's got some friends that are living in tents. So,
oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, France. Come on, Kat, find somewhere else to go.
Yeah. And there's another storm out there. Looks like it's heading to Florida now.
Yeah.
So that sucks.
Well, I mean, this one went through Florida too.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It sucks that they're looking at a double whammy here.
Well, I'm sorry to Florida, but better them than us.
Yeah. I don't want to go through it again.
Yeah. So, our thoughts are with you.
Yeah. Good luck.
You keep the hurricane, and our thoughts are with you.
Yeah. I hope you got good infrastructure.
Yeah. And insurance.
And insurance. Oh, yeah. Gotta love insurance.
Oh. So, we're a little delayed here. There were some things that came up that we wanted to talk about that we've already forgotten about.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and start with the debate that I didn't watch, but you did.
Man,
suffer through it.
So I watched that debate, and suffered through is the right word. It really was tough to watch. And I'll start by saying this debate was pointless. Like, I'm going to kind of talk about a little bit what went on during it, but nobody's mind was changed from this debate. This is not one of those, obviously people's minds were changed when Trump and Biden debated because Biden was no longer on the ticket shortly after.
Right.
So, these debates can have that effect, but particularly this vice presidential, it didn't have it. Like, it didn't have that any of that to it.
Yeah.
But it was, like I say, the moderators were like the worst part of it. Like, there were quite a few moments throughout the debate where it could have gotten interesting, and there was some interesting conversation starting to be had, and the moderators both times stepped in and just shut it down.
Yeah.
Which was really frustrating. And it bothers me that we still do these debates on like syndicated TV like this.
That's actually pretty new. I mean, at least it being run by the news organizations themselves is pretty new. Yeah. Actually, I think it arose with Donald Trump.
So I had heard that too. I hadn't looked into it, but that was actually, I guess they had the presidential or the Commission for Presidential Debates.
Yeah.
And I guess they did away with that somewhere during the whole Trump phenomenon.
Yeah, and before that, it was the League of Women Voters, I think, that usually sponsored the debates.
Yeah.
But then, that was like way too independent for the government to handle.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's the only reason that somebody like, what's his name? The Texas billionaire that was on the ticket.
Perot?
Yeah, Ross Perot. The only reason Ross Perot was in there is because it wasn't the Commission on Presidential Debates that was running. It wasn't an actual government organization.
Well, they made
sure
after Ross Perot that wouldn't happen again.
Right.
There was a serious effort to do away with that.
Yeah, they pushed the independent organizations out. They took over at the central government to make sure that only the two candidates that they wanted would be part of it. And then I'm not sure exactly when it switched over to being the news organizations that were running it, but I think that it was with Trump.
That's what I had heard as well. So,
Or maybe it could it could just be that one of the news organizations did an independent one with Trump and it got killer ratings, and so
yeah,
they all started doing it after that. I'm not sure, but
well, it needs to stop. Like this, like this one really put it on full display, especially a few of the trying to think when they were talking about immigration, and the moderators actually came in through the conversation because they kept saying we want to move on, and they were both trying to still talk about the issue it was that they were talking about, and they actually just muted the mics and just like completely put a stop to it.
There will be no debate here.
Yeah, well, and it really was like a power trip moment from them, and it was horrible, man. But yeah, like I said, as these things tend to go, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of substance to it. The Waltz is apparently friends with school shooters. Like
I heard that
came
clip
out
over
during
and over again.
yeah. So
I'm sure that was just a mistake.
But it's kind of weird. Like the way he speaks is not very fluid. Like, and I think that's the reason he had that flub there. Like, because I do think that was just a flub.
Yeah.
But because I don't think he's really friends with any school shooters.
Probably not.
But yeah, I mean it's definitely he has a weird cadence that he uses, and I think that kind of led to some of that.
Well, I did watch Glenn Greenwald's summary that he recorded right after the debate ended.
Yeah.
And Glenn Greenwald was saying that Walz didn't do a very good job of separating himself and the administration from J.D. Vance and Trump. Yeah. That there were a lot of things that he was like, well, I agree about that, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the statements he used at least once was, I think you're on the right track, but I forget how he worded it now, I lost it. But yeah, I think you and Trump are on different pages on this or something like that.
Okay.
So
trying to draw a line between J.D. Vance, who sounds all reasonable, and Trump,
who's not, who could never be, right?
Yeah. No. I think that was kind of the main thing that Greenwald was talking about, is that J.D. Vance absolutely did everything that he needed to do, because he was very obviously not weird.
Well, so yeah, that's something that stood out to me throughout the debate. Is there is somebody on that stage that seemed a little weird, but it wasn't J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the side-by-side thing that they did throughout it didn't help Waltz at all. Like, because J.D. Vance just kind of has this, like, I don't know, relaxed, like, chill look to him the whole time. And Waltz just looked weird. Like, I don't know how else to put it. He looked weird. So.
Yeah, I think anybody who's actually listened to J.D. Vance has to concede that he expresses his policies very effectively.
He does.
And so if all you knew about J.D. Vance is the mainstream media calling him weird and weird and weird over and over and over again for all that time, and you'd never actually seen the man speak before,
you might
and this
believe
was your
it.
first, and this was your first exposure to actually watching J.D. Vance, that probably it had you reevaluate at least.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with that, and I'll say as far as the debate went, I think it's pretty well hands down that Vance won it.
Yeah,
like I mean, I still don't think that it shifts anything. It doesn't overly matter, but I mean, he definitely seemed to be the stronger of the two.
Yeah, nobody really cares about the vice presidential debate. At the same time, they were also pushing the idea that, well, Trump's old and J.D. Vance is even worse.
Yeah, and that did not bear out.
Yeah, I think that anybody who was just believing that and had never seen him might be reevaluating that too. Like, well, I mean, if we lost Trump, this guy doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, no, he's perfectly capable.
Yeah, calm, cool, collected at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would give a lot to have that in a president right now.
Right? Yeah.
So, okay. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nothing else really stands out. I can't think of anything else that was really big as far as the debate went.
Well, I'd like to talk then a little bit about this longshoreman strike.
Okay.
And then we'll spend the balance of our time on probably the most important thing that we're talking about. But
yeah.
I think it's worth maybe talking about some of the economics of the longshoreman strike.
You mean the toilet paper shortages?
What now?
So yeah, they're buying all the toilet paper again.
Who's buying all the toilet paper?
Everybody. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not the smartest people among us. I'll put it that way. And that's really what I had to say about that. At least that end of it. So I work in retail, so I've been dealing with this all week. Of course, the longshoremen went back to work Friday. Mm-hmm. So the strike has been over, but I've been at the store all weekend, and I'm still having people come through with buggies of toilet paper, worried that it's going to be gone.
So has the longshoreman strike been settled?
90 days, I think.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. It's just a short term to try and give them a chance to negotiate.
Yeah, I think
an answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, it's still worth talking about like the possibilities, what this could mean.
Absolutely. I mean, because it's not over, like we were saying. I mean, they basically pushed it beyond the election.
Oh,
which
okay.
I think I feel like is really what was at play here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this would hurt Biden. I say Biden, but it would hurt the Democrats.
Yeah, the strike would hurt the Democrats definitely, and then they can also say for the campaign ads, like, do you want a Republican in there trying to negotiate with the unions? The unions have always been closest with the Democrat Party, and which is also a lie, but
it's a good talking point.
Yeah. So I can see that. My understanding, there was a lot of worry about this going into it, though, and I want to talk about some of that stuff. One of the things is that it was a known entity. Yeah, like people knew that it was coming.
That this was on the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah. So already, the commodities exchange essentially had moved, or at least planned for alternatives. Yeah. So your import export stuff would be shifted to the West Coast. Yeah. Ground transport is more expensive in a lot of cases. Yeah. So that would put a pressure on price increases on domestic goods. Yeah. It would put a pressure on price increases, obviously, for things that usually come from Europe. Yeah. But since we get most of our commodity goods from Asia anyway, I don't think that it would have a huge impact because all that stuff's coming in through the West Coast to begin with. Yeah. The interesting thing, though, I think, is that particularly domestic food products. Yeah. You would have a strong downward pressure on a lot of the things, especially things that are primarily exported. Yeah. Because the farmer groups, they export a lot of produce. Say produce, it makes you sound like I'm just talking about fruits in my head for some reason. But yeah. Anyway, the grown stuff, crops that are exported, they're exported because they can get a higher price overseas.
The same thing with beef too, right?
Yeah. Beef, chicken, pork, particularly. Yeah. They get better prices overseas, and so a lot of what's produced here ends up being exported. Yeah. If it can't be exported effectively or efficiently, then it'll flood the domestic markets and put pressure on prices to go down.
Yeah. That's what I had heard. Particularly, the example I had heard used was beef. Mm-hmm. Is that what would happen is you could see the price of beef plummet, which would be pretty nice for the consumer right now. I don't know if you've bought beef lately, but it's a little pricey.
Well, corn and soy are also big ones. Okay. Soy probably less so because a lot of it actually is exported to Asia, so it's going off the West Coast anyway. But corn particularly, I think, is going to be another. That's a big domestic crop.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be able to be exported effectively to Europe
Yeah.
and Africa and so on. So I think that you would see price pressures go down, unless
Yeah.
big farm.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it big ag because
Big ag.
you know, farm's too close to pharma.
Yeah.
But big ag has a very effective lobby.
Okay.
And
So they just get paid not to produce.
right.
I mean,
Like
that's
they can lobby the government to just buy their products to keep them in business at a higher price than normal and put pressure on prices to go up instead.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of what's wrong with the agriculture in this country anyway, is that particular, whatchamacallit?
Scam?
Scam. Well, it is a scam. Yeah, I was thinking of the lobby. Yeah, that particular lobby is so strong that, I mean, it just interferes with the free market.
Yeah.
It doesn't let the product just get produced and go to market. There's so many other factors that are involved and ways to get money without doing anything. So
well, and that because of that, though, you might see some other downward pressure on goods where there are generally competing imports.
Yeah,
because they put tariffs on import. Like sugar is a big one.
Yeah.
Like, there's a strong lobby in the U.S. that keeps really high tariffs on imported sugar because it costs more to produce sugar here than it does elsewhere, and so we would import all our sugar. But to keep the sugar farms in business in the U.S., we make sure that the prices of imported sugar are high as well.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing being imported,
Yeah.
and all the sugar producers within the U.S. are competing for that market share, again, you might see prices go down.
Yeah.
I don't know. It remains to be seen what would happen, and I think the biggest thing is some kind of hang-ups around imported commodities, like running low on goods that are almost exclusively imported, particularly if they're imported almost exclusively from across the Atlantic.
Yeah. A big part of the conversation we're having now,
or across the Mediterranean, or not the Mediterranean, the Gulf of Mexico,
is that if all we're assuming that everybody's going to act logically and respond logically to the problem here.
Yeah.
And the truth is that's just not. I mean, the toilet paper is the example of, because toilet paper is all made here in the USA. Like, it's not like there's a factory right across the bay that produces toilet. Kimberly-Clark is right there. You can get, we ain't gonna run out of toilet paper and paper towels. But I just watched for the past week, my shelves get stripped of it because people are paranoid because it's not going to come in on the ships.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, it's really astonishing, but you have to kind of factor.
So where are they getting that idea? Is that coming off the news?
No, it's not coming. They're just, I don't understand, because it's not coming off social media either, because everybody on social media is posting, there are things that would be, and we kind of talked about it, like bananas is a big one. Like, I mean, if this strike had persisted, like, you may have trouble getting bananas.
Yeah.
And there was a few other things that were on, like, the big list of what I've been seeing people post on social media. But toilet paper isn't on it. And it's not, and the crazy thing is, like I say, it's not the smartest among us, because, like, during 2020, when we had the real toilet paper crisis, everybody was involved. Like, there was, I mean, everybody just kind of got worked up into a frenzy and started panic buying this stuff. And that hasn't been the case this time. It's just a smaller percentage of people are freaking out, but it's still causing, I mean, I've still got toilet paper in my store, so it's not like it's gone, but there's substantially less of it than there should be. And
that's funny.
It makes no sense, but that's something you have to consider, like, when we're analyzing something like this, where, especially when you're talking about the supply chain, like, you just don't know how people are going to react to things. And I mean, but that's the reason it's so hard to predict, as far as, like, what will happen to the prices, where some stuff that you would think should go down would, because there's other things that you just can't account for.
Well, and yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point too. As people replace the goods that aren't being imported with domestic products, then you have more demand for those domestic products, which could put price pressure in the other direction.
Yeah.
Like if people aren't buying bananas, so they're buying citrus that's coming out of Florida or California or whatever, maybe even though all those things are produced domestically, the
You
prices
end
go
up
up
with
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
they call it speculating for a reason.
That's true. I'm not buying any stocks in any of this stuff, man.
But I'm just saying but it is you just don't know how the market's going to react,
Yeah.
So
Well, do you want to move to Iran?
no, I do not.
That is the right answer.
I am happy here in the good old US of A.
How about Lebanon?
Nope, I'm good there too.
That's a smart move because apparently the State Department is not helping Americans get out of Lebanon.
Oh, really? So I haven't heard about that. Really?
They had a transport for about 100 of the something like 4,000 or 6,000 Americans in Lebanon.
Wow.
And they told everybody else they're on their own.
Figure it out.
Yep.
Book you a flight. That is wild.
I will point out that the Americans in Israel that wanted out had no problems getting help from the State Department.
Sorry, I got sidetracked with work message.
Yeah.
What was that again?
I said the Americans in Israel that wanted to get out had no trouble getting help from the State Department.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But if you're in Lebanon, you're on the wrong side of the line, so we don't care about those Americans.
That's just crazy.
So there was an attack.
Yeah.
It did nothing. That's what the word is.
Yeah.
I think we can dispel that to a degree, but
Okay.
I just wanted to...
Well, and I was curious about that because I watched some of the live coverage of it, and I couldn't really tell from what I was seeing if, like, I mean, a lot of the missiles you saw blow up in the air and whatnot, but it looked like some of them were at least making contact with something.
Yeah.
Now, the reporting I saw that it was like, oh, they landed in fields and whatnot. I mean, I don't know how true any of that is because I don't exactly trust what I see on mainstream media.
Yeah, I actually kind of wanted to back up and go through the timeline or some of the timeline on this. Okay. You can only go back so far, right? Yeah. But I was going to go back to, I guess it was the end of July. I didn't write down dates, and I'm terrible at dates, so I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
But I'm going to go back. I think it was the end of July. The new Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, something like that.
Yeah.
I could be pronouncing that wrong. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah.
Was inaugurated. And so this is a guy who was elected in Iran pushing for negotiation with the U.S. and a return to the JCPOA, which you'll remember Trump left unilaterally with no evidence that Iran was in violation, and then Trump reinstituted heavy sanctions, mostly, I believe, at the behest of John Bolton.
Yeah.
But anyway, while visiting for the inauguration of the fairly moderate new Iranian president who wanted to negotiate with the West, Ismail Haniyeh, which was Hamas's political chief, was assassinated.
Yeah.
While in the care of the Iranians. This is a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a very strong message being delivered by that to the moderate president wanting to negotiate with the West when one of his guests was assassinated by Israel.
Yeah.
At his inauguration.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, roughly since October 7th, Israel has been trading strikes with Hezbollah in Lebanon, southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
Now, I say trading very loosely here because Israel is responsible for 3 out of every 4 cross-border strikes in Lebanon.
Yeah.
I mean, with Lebanon. For every one time that the Lebanese launch an attack against Israel in Israel, Israel launches an attack against the Lebanese in Lebanon 3 times.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So this isn't very even exactly. And Hezbollah has said the entire time that their one demand to stop their attacks on Israel is a ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's all they want.
Yeah. I knew that. Yeah.
So then, week and a half ago, roughly,
Okay.
Israel dropped 80 2,000-pound bombs on 6 residential buildings in Dahiyah, outside of Beirut, killing the Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah and an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps senior officer.
Yeah.
Whose name I came across one time, could never find it again. It was like Abbas something or other. Sorry, can't find it now.
All right.
I even went back. I even used my internet search history to try and find it again.
Find it, just couldn't. It wasn't there.
Yeah, couldn't do it. So sorry. But yeah, and killing an unknown number of. I mean, this is 6 residential buildings.
Civilian.
Like
casualties.
they essentially leveled a couple of blocks.
Yeah.
To kill this guy, and who knows how many civilians were killed, because we don't care about anyone other than the Israeli civilians. You see, that's the only thing that gets reported.
Oh yeah.
Just as a side note, and despite all of the talk in the war in Gaza about civilian deaths, where now it's like 48,000 that the Hamas-controlled health ministry. Because we have to say that every time. Hamas-controlled health ministry has reported. Yeah. They only report deaths of people whose bodies they have either in the hospital or in the morgue.
Yeah, they don't go into missing or anything like that.
No. And so there was a group, a fairly large group of American aid workers that has put out a report saying that they estimate more like 118,000 civilian deaths in Gaza.
It's insane.
So I'm really tired of hearing about how the Hamas-controlled health ministry is lying to you about how many people were killed. They're actually underreporting by a great deal. Anybody who's been following the stuff in Israel, Gaza for any period of time already knew that.
Yeah.
Because in the past, when there have been conflicts between Israel and Gaza, the Hamas-controlled health ministry had always undercounted. Based on the independent sources that went in after the fact and counted up deaths.
Yeah.
So this shouldn't be a surprise, but the way it's reported in the U.S. is that because it's Hamas controlled, they're exaggerating.
They have an agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're actually undercounting. And these American aid workers are estimating, like I said, something around 118,000 civilian deaths in Gaza in the last year. And that's, as I understand it, that's deaths from the strikes. They're not even counting people who died from disease or
starvation or the
afterwards.
whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, anyway, and just as a side note, this order to kill Nasrallah in Lebanon, the strike was ordered not long after Netanyahu spoke at the UN.
Yeah.
The order was given, and Israel put out a picture of him on the phone ordering the strike from his hotel room in New York.
Really?
Now, I'm no legal expert, but it seems to me that if you order the murder of somebody in New York, that you should be prosecuted for ordering somebody's murder. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure this is illegal in the United States.
Yeah.
But, they'll never ask. I mean, they're not even going to. Netanyahu has to travel directly to the U.S. because this is the only safe place for him because he's been accused of war crimes.
Yeah. He can't just like hop around.
Yeah. So we don't care about his war crimes. We sure as hell don't care about this.
Yeah. No. But that's the reason that all of that to lead up to, that's the reason that Iran attacked Israel.
Yes. Yes, so exactly. So they had a guest killed in their country and then one of their countrymen killed in Lebanon.
Yeah. And so that's the reason for the missiles being launched that supposedly did no damage.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay. Another side note on this is that Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, Pezeshkian, claimed Who knows, really? But he said that that they delayed a response to the killing of Haniyeh in their country because the U.S. told him that it could. The U.S. asked them to delay any response because any response to the assassination of Haniyeh could derail ceasefire negotiations in Gaza.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was obviously bull because we have no interest in a ceasefire in Gaza.
Well, yeah.
Another side note, as long as we're on that point, is that Politico reported that sources inside the U.S. and inside of Israel both say that the U.S. encouraged the incursion into Lebanon privately, even though they were speaking out against it publicly.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Now, so then Iran launched at the end of the week, or no, beginning of the week. It was like Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I watched it too because I was off. Yeah.
Yeah. Iran launched, the word is 181 missiles.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how precise that number is. It sounds precise, right?
Yeah,
or you'd say 180 some.
Yeah.
Roughly 180. I don't know. Anyway.
Roughly 181. That's oddly specific for a roughly number.
Yes, it is. Because there's no fractions in this.
Yeah.
Launched 180-ish,
Yeah.
we'll say,
All right.
missiles at Israel. And the only reported death is the death of one Palestinian in the West Bank who was hit by falling debris from an intercepted missile.
Okay.
It's a bad day.
Yeah, right. What a way to go, right?
Yeah. Now, Israel has finally admitted that that it did cause that they did successfully strike some military targets.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah. Now, I've heard people out there. Actually, you know what? I'm going to complain about No Agenda for a minute.
Oh, okay.
And I love this show. Like I think No Agenda is a great podcast, but sometimes and can't hold them to blame because
they're technically media deconstruction. Like that's really all they're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
they're deconstructing the media.
Yeah. Sometimes I have trouble understanding that not everybody reads all of this stuff.
Well, you got to
figure,
I do.
Knows all this history and so sometimes. So the first thing that set me off was like a couple of weeks ago. They played a clip that they said, well, finally we have somebody who can definitively explain what's going on with Lebanon and Israel. And it was from an NTD clip, New Tang Dynasty, for those out there that don't know.
Big fan, by the way. I like NTD.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Yeah. So I almost pulled this clip, but I decided not to. So they introduced their expert that's going to talk about the history of Lebanon and Israel. And it's David effing Wormser.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you're not following all this stuff, then I get it. You don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
But as soon as they said Wormser, I was like, Wormser? You're going to use Wormser as your guy to tell you definitively in an unbiased way what's going on between Israel and Lebanon? Because Wormser is a preeminent neocon. This is a guy who was an assistant to John Bolton, who was an advisor to Dick Cheney. If you were keeping close track of what was going on around the Iraq War, you heard this guy's name over and over and over again.
Yeah. No.
He is not to be trusted on this.
He's been around.
Not to be trusted on this topic.
Yeah.
So it drove me nuts. Oh, and also his big thing was that there was a UN resolution that said that Lebanon had to pull back past I can't remember the name of the river, and Israel had to leave Lebanon, and that Hezbollah did not pull back past that river.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, this is the commentary on No Agenda. Obviously, Israel has every right because Lebanon had a UN resolution against them and they didn't follow the directive that was given to them.
Yeah.
All right. All you got to do is go to Wikipedia and look up UN resolutions relating to Israel or Israel-Palestine or whatever. And you'll see a giant list of they have to withdraw from the occupied territories, that they have to, it's almost a list of just a lot of the things on there are listed about 30 times.
Yeah.
Essentially the same resolution, because Israel has never followed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that that Lebanon or that Hezbollah is justified in ignoring the UN resolution, although I don't really put a lot of stock in the authority of the UN to begin with.
Yeah.
But it's not like this is one-sided.
Yeah.
And in fact, this UN resolution that that directed Hezbollah to pull back beyond this river and Israel to pull out of Lebanon was after a long string of UN resolutions ordering Israel to end its invasion of Lebanon.
Yeah.
That they ignored.
That they didn't do. Yeah.
And so in the end, it was settled by telling Israel to go back to their own country and Lebanese people to move away from the border within their own country.
Yeah. It's wild.
So anyway, that's only, I guess there was something else with No Agenda had played that drove me crazy, and now I can't think of what it was. Oh yeah, the other thing was they were saying, well, this was obviously an ineffective attack because nobody died.
Yeah.
No, actually what happened here was that unlike the Israelis, Iran attacked military targets.
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't going for the death count.
Yeah. Now it could, I still think it's odd that they didn't cause any casualties. I mean, Israel says
military installations would have, people there.
But they knew that the missiles were coming too.
Oh, so you think maybe they evacuated?
Yeah, well, or pulled back into harder,
more fortified areas.
Positions. Yeah. So, and one of the buildings that was at least damaged in this attack was the Mossad HQ in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
So here's another part where Israel's claim that they have to cause a bunch of civilian casualties because only barbarians like Hamas and Hezbollah would put their people in among civilians. Yeah, Mossad HQ is in downtown Tel Aviv.
Right.
Also surrounded by residential and privately owned business and so forth. So those barbarians in Palestine are not the only ones that put their military and intelligence among their people.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Mossad building was damaged in Tel Aviv. This kind of speaks to the accuracy of the missiles, I would say.
Yeah.
That they were able to damage the Mossad HQ without causing any civilian casualties, considering where it is.
Yeah.
But most of the missiles were targeting air bases, which are generally not in the middle of residential areas.
Yeah.
Or any kind of civilian structure at all.
So some of them did get through the Iron Dome, though?
Absolutely.
Okay.
How many is a good question. It is a good indication that there was more damage than they want known because the Israeli military immediately started censoring the press.
Yeah.
We've all seen the pictures. They're hitting something.
Yeah.
Like, there were a lot of missiles that got through. Now, Iran says that 90% of the missiles got through. Doubt it.
Yeah. I mean, just the fireworks I saw on TV didn't really jive with that.
Yeah. But
it did look like some were getting through, though.
Yeah. But the Israeli claim that there was no damage.
Yeah.
Also
not true. Yeah. So, I mean, we got bad info on both sides.
Yeah. So,
where do you think this goes from here?
Well, unfortunately, I think it gets escalated again.
Yeah.
Because while the U.S. says that they don't want to see escalatory war in the region, the U.S. is only defending Israel.
Yeah. So
the U.S. played a part in defending Israel from these missiles, and all that does actually, since that's the only people that U.S. is defending, is encourage Israel to continue to escalate.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they have a U.S. shield in front of them and they can do whatever they want. So I think that Israel responds to this in a bad way, and then Iran does too. Because Iran has said at this point, like, hey, we've been reeling it in ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're done with that.
Yeah.
So they've made it clear that they want this to be it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we've responded to these insults and attacks on our people.
Yeah.
And within our country. We've responded, and we expect that to be it. Yeah. And Israel has said that they plan a massive attack against Iran in response.
and
And
right
this is
here-
what Netanyahu's wanted for a long time.
Oh, he's as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Like he's had the little picture of the bomb that he's been like.
And speaking of the JCPOA, this is an important point that we withdrew from the JCPOA. So now Netanyahu gets to go out there and claim again that Iran is weeks from a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. All right.
Which is a complete lie. Now they're weeks from being able probably to produce enough enriched uranium for a weapon.
do it, yeah.
But to actually produce a weapon,
Yeah.
a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And the other thing though is that like we're just encouraging Iran to produce a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
Like we're giving them every reason to create a nuclear weapon and no reason not to.
Well, and this is where American leadership could really step in if we in good faith would talk to both sides and try to actually mediate this thing. I'm willing to bet, I don't know what it would look like, but I'm sure if we would have to do it for real, go in and talk and listen to both sides, we could settle this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
But just like what you're saying, only taking one side of this argument will never do that.
Yeah.
That's just not how diplomacy works. And we are the big stick. We've got the military might to enforce some things and really force this to settle down. But we don't seem to have any interest in doing that.
No, because people like David Wormser have also been wanting a war with Iran for a long time.
Yeah. I had mentioned to you that what the name of the clip that I had mentioned.
I don't know.
The one where we were going to invade 7 countries and
I
can't think of it. I had it when
7 countries in 5 years. Wesley Clark.
Yeah. This has been the plan for a long time. This has been Iran's been on the target list since we went into Iraq.
Yeah.
So, they're just behind, but there's a list of countries they want to hit. And I think, am I not mistaken that Iran's the last one?
Iran's the last one. They had to get rid of everybody else first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, they haven't been able to take down Syria, Lebanon either.
Yeah. But there's been attempts.
Really, Iraq for that matter.
Yeah. And that was the first one on the list.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't work. That's the reason, is because this whole idea that we're going to go in and put in a puppet dictator it doesn't work.
Well, even the idea about there were people in the U.S. saying that after the death of Nasrallah, that now's our opportunity to remake the Middle East. No, it's not.
You can't do it.
They seem to think that groups like Hezbollah or Hamas, for that matter, are like North Korea. Yeah. Where, if you just take down Kim, then the whole thing falls apart. No, Hezbollah, Hamas, these kind of groups that know about the assassination power of Israeli intelligence and so forth, they planned for this.
Yeah.
There's a succession. Supposedly, his replacement was also killed this week in an airstrike by Israel.
That's what they said, and that was the claim in the media, is that they're really weakened now.
But it's not true. The truth is that now somebody else is in charge, and they haven't missed a beat.
No, and especially when you're dealing with a group that has a purpose, they believe in the mission. However you feel about that, that they I don't know, it's just different in the Middle East. I don't really know how to describe it, but it has this different.
There's also the insurgent math that I can't remember if that was General Petraeus or
I want to say that was Petraeus, but I could be wrong.
But the insurgent math, for every one you kill, you get 20 more.
Yeah, exactly.
So
which kind of goes to my point that like I say, you can't destroy an idea in this way, and that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, and as you're killing people's brothers and sisters and parents and children and so forth, you're just creating more hate.
Yeah.
Resentment or whatever. I really recommend everybody go watch Max Blumenthal and something Cohen. Can't remember his first name. their documentary called Killing Gaza on YouTube. Find it free on YouTube.
Yeah.
You will be reading some subtitles throughout because they're, speaking in Arabic, I suppose.
Talking to the locals, right?
Yeah, talking to locals in Palestine.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just fascinating to listen to, because for the most part, these people, they just want to live a normal life.
Yeah.
That's all they want.
Yeah.
They just want to live a normal life and not be, subject to somebody else. And there's definitely some anger and some hate there.
Oh, I'm sure there has to be.
But a lot of the times when you see anger and hate, they're actually talking about, like, that dead guy out in the street is my brother.
Yeah. Right.
That the Israelis just shot.
Yeah.
While he was crossing the street.
Yeah.
Because...
why not, right?
Yeah, because he's a young man in occupied territory.
Yeah.
Wasn't doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, there's absolutely resistance, but you gotta look at the score here.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. If the U.S. really wanted to avoid escalation, the U.S. has now defended Israel from Iranian missiles twice.
Yeah.
Now, if the U.S. wasn't only defending Israel from Iranian missiles, if the U.S. was also defending the Lebanese from Israeli missiles and the Syrians from Israeli missiles, because they just struck Syria also this week, the Gazans from Israeli missiles, and the Iranians from Israeli missiles.
Yeah.
Now, notice how lopsided that is, by the way.
Yeah.
That the U.S. has to defend Israel against Iranian missiles, but to defend against Israeli missiles, they would need to defend Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Gaza.
Yeah. So we have the systems in place in Israel to defend Israel against an incoming attack. Mm-hmm. It seems like we could use those same systems to shoot the outgoing missiles, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're also using naval forces.
Yeah,
they're
that's what I'm
incepting from
saying.
naval
We could
too.
literally use the same effort that we use to defend Israel to, like, stop Israel from doing what they're doing.
Yes.
Like, I mean, it seems like logistically it wouldn't be. I mean, you may need to monitor a few more things than what you do. It doesn't seem like it'd be that hard. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, like, we really could create stability in that region.
Yeah, we could say, all right, look, we've had enough of this.
Yeah.
We're stopping.
Nope, we're stopping all missile fire.
Yeah,
from
we're
here
stopping
on.
all of these attacks.
Now sit down and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it really. I'm not saying it would be. You could create a perfect outcome there, but it would be far preferable to what we have.
Well, so up until now, it seemed like Israel was kind of telling us to, go F ourselves.
Yeah.
Whenever we were trying to lay down, publicly, while the administration was saying, we've instructed Israel to stop doing this or to not do this, or we don't want them going into Lebanon. We want them to stop the civilian casualties in Gaza, and Israel just ignoring everything that we had to say.
Yeah.
Now, that's why this Politico report, I think, is so important, because it shows that it's not that Israel is ignoring us. It's
so
that
we're telling them two different things.
Yeah, we're telling them privately to escalate and publicly not to.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, you could have, this kind of lays it out a little more, vividly, but I'm pretty sure we could tell that that's what was going on in the first place.
We were confident, but now we have reporting to back it up.
But you have, something to back it up. Yeah.
No, and at the same time, though, Netanyahu is such an arrogant character that it wouldn't surprise me, because he's said in the past, hey, I got the U.S. wrapped around my finger.
Yeah.
It wouldn't really surprise me at the same time if we were telling him to stop doing this, that, and the other, and he was saying,
Just
forget
doing it.
you, I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
Stop me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's that kind of character too.
No, 100%.
But I am less surprised that we're encouraging this privately.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people in our government, that want an expanded war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous and stupid. Especially with what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because Ukraine's losing. They're losing territory every day.
Yeah.
And their invasion into the Kursk region, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just not going anywhere.
Right.
It didn't succeed in distracting Russian forces from the eastern Donbass. It didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
And that was predictable too, because within Russia can use their domestic forces, essentially their National Guard, which they don't use internationally.
Externally.
Yeah. So you just increase the number of forces that they could bring to bear by going into their country.
Yeah.
Just don't. But we just sent them agreed to send them another $8 billion worth of weaponry. So,
wow, is it really $8 billion?
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to think for a minute. If we took that $8 billion
and paid the longshoremen,
any number of things. I mean, that's not where I was going, but that's a good point. I mean, it done anything else but that with it. Like,
by the way, I'm not advocating just paying off the longshoremen. But,
me either. I mean, I'm not advocating.
But I think that's a better use of that money.
Yeah, I mean, just cut everybody in the U.S. a check. Like, I mean, I'm
lower our taxes by that amount.
Yeah, like something like that money could be put to so much better use.
Yeah.
Any number of ways other than what. I mean, hey, use that money to help the hurricane relief.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that's something I'm actually hearing a lot of people talk about is the fact that we can send all this money all over the world, but something happens in our own country and they're getting like $750 checks or something.
Yeah, well, the contractor lobby just doesn't have as much influence as the military lobby.
Oh, well, you're right about that. Well, there's no question there.
The lumberman lobby is just not as powerful.
They don't have the pull.
No.
So
need the juice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a lot of what it's about too. And I have to worry about if we really did get ourselves sucked into something. Like if we really got ourselves sucked into another forever war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Because Iran's not an easy win.
No, as much as the Lindsey Grahams and whatnot want to talk about just like rolling through there, like that's not how that war plays out. We think Iraq was bad. Like this is, I mean, I've heard like Iraq times 10 or something.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, that's...
And it's certainly not like these other places because the U.S. just launched airstrikes into Yemen this week too.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Struck a bunch of locations in Yemen. But Iran has an air force.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Iran has a real air force, and Iran has a whole lot of missiles, and Iran has ground troops. Iran can defend itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would we win in the end? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't argue that we couldn't win it, but I'm just saying, what kind of resources are we going to pour into it, and how long is it going to take?
Well, that's the real question because we have sent so many resources to Israel and to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can
ramp up.
Yeah. We can fight a war, but probably not a long war right now. Or at least there would be a period between where we run out of what we have left in stock and what we can get out into the field quickly in terms of changing our production.
Yeah. And for what?
Where there would be at least a weak part where things could go wrong. Yeah. And then what if, China decides that that's when they want to take over all of the South China Sea?
Yeah.
Which I don't think is likely either, but...
Well, I mean, you present the opportunity, though.
Right.
I mean, because that's what would happen here.
Yeah.
I mean, they see that we're having a weak moment against Iran. It's like, oh, if we're going to make a move, like, now's the clear time.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're in World War III.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how this rolls.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lion can beat a hyena one-on-one.
Yeah.
But when they up against a pack of hyenas, the lion's running.
Well, that's exactly, and that's what you're up against here. I mean, how many fronts do we want to try to wage war?
Yeah, 0 is my answer. To that.
Yeah, I mean that's the obvious answer, but it's a dangerous game, and I don't think that our powers that be recognize that.
Yeah, and I don't think the rest of the world recognizes us as this insuperable power anymore either.
No, absolutely not.
I think this is a whole lot of bad foreign policy decisions. And the really unfortunate thing is that in January, it's not going to change no matter who wins this election.
It doesn't matter. Like neither Republican nor Democrat have a fix for this. I mean, I'd prefer one over the other, but mildly.
Yeah, I mean, I at least see some hope in Ukraine if Trump wins.
Yeah.
That we could just put an end to that.
Yeah.
I don't see hope in the Middle East of Trump. In fact, Trump might be
will,
worse.
He will ramp up the Middle East.
Yeah, Trump is probably worse in the Middle East. At the same time, I'm not as concerned about nuclear war coming about as a result of war in the Middle East as I am in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, given that additional factor,
gives a slight edge to Trump.
Yeah.
But only slight.
Yeah.
So, it's...
I don't know. I don't understand why we feel like we have to run everything. We could have gotten along, well, just using the JCPOA as an example again, when the JCPOA was formed, the U.S. and Russia were on the same page about preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Like, we went into this agreement together.
Yeah. But that ain't the case
Not anymore.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. At this point, Russia's like, well, Iran's going to have to figure out how to defend itself.
Yeah, right. We all need to figure out how to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there's a bully in town, and that's us.
Yep.
What's really wild to me is if we really do want to run everything like we clearly do, like, why don't we try to at least be a vehicle for peace? Like, I mean, if we really did want to rule the world the way we do, like an empire the way we do, like, why don't we do like kind of what we talked about earlier and like actually try to create peace through our...
Peace through strength.
Well, through our superiority.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like we laid out a minute ago, like, I mean, we could shut it down in the Middle East and be like, everybody's got to talk. I mean, we have that capability, but that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there's two ways we could do that in the Middle East. We could do it the way that we talked about. If you want to be the superior, the unipower, then and show off how badass you are to everybody, then yeah, you could just shut it down. Everybody launches a missile, that missile goes down because of the U.S.
Yeah.
The other way to do it is to stop funding Israel.
Well, there's that too.
Because then Israel would have to negotiate.
I think if we wanted to do it, like that's what would happen is we would make a proclamation, hey, we're shooting any missiles down, like we're done with the missile firing, and then we stop funding Israel.
Yeah.
And then it's like everybody come to the table and figure this out. But I mean, unless you're ready to start launching ground troops, the missile flying days are over.
I mean, Israel used to be friendly with Iran.
Well, I think given the scenario we laid out, it probably wouldn't take that long.
No.
I mean, once they know that they don't have the bully at their back.
Yeah. Once they don't have the U.S. shield anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just a couple of years ago when we were pulling out of Syria, remember they went on and on about how the Kurds were going to be utterly destroyed now. The Kurds are going to be utterly destroyed if they don't have the U.S. support.
The Kurds.
Yeah. What's going to happen to them? Well, what happened to them was that they negotiated with the Syrian government.
Yeah.
When they didn't have the U.S. shield anymore, they negotiated with the Syrian government. They're there. Yeah. They're still there. They're fine.
Yeah. I mean,
it's probably not an ideal world for them, but, it's not an ideal world for anybody, so.
There you go. Yeah. you got to make the best of what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So. I don't know.
Okay.
It's just really disappointing to know that there are fixes out there for some of this, albeit not perfect, and to have to watch it play out the way it's playing out.
Well, the worst part about it is knowing that the U.S. is encouraging an escalation through their one-sided defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
On one side of defense, I guess.
Nice.
That was terrible, but thank you.
But I appreciate it.
All right, well, let's wrap it up there on that high note.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that there's going to be a nuclear war. How's that?
I mean, I agree. It's just the prospects are higher than I'd like them to be.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Israel is the sole nuclear power in the Middle East. They really don't need us.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wrap up there. Sorry we're late, but I like to think that if we get it out on the weekend, then it's there on Monday for everybody that listens on Monday anyway.
That listen throughout the week. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully some of you didn't even notice.
Yeah.
And hopefully the rest of you forgive us
Well,
and come back next week.
I won't be here next week.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
I'll figure something out.
That's going to be either throw one from the can or produce one on your own.
I'll figure something out. I'll get something out. It might not be until Sunday again.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm really bad about like it's just easier for me to do on the weekends when I'm doing them by myself, especially.
Yeah.
When I don't have anything else to do in the day.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll see. I mean, maybe by the weekend I can come over, but it's like I said, I definitely can't do it during the week. Like that's a given.
okay.
Like Thursday and Friday is going to be off limits for me.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll get something out one way or another.
Yep.
And so we'll be back next week somehow,
All right.
sometime. Wearing this Batman shirt, it's like really making me feel bad about this announcement. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, like and share, comment, subscribe, leave reviews. You can always email me at michael@thelibertymike.com. Any place that has notifications, you'll know when we actually get the thing out.
Yeah.
So that's all that stuff. And we'll be back next week when we finally get this right. And in the meantime, try to stay free.
Life short, live free.
Ciao.
Later.